The National Desk, America's News, now.
So when I win, I will immediately bring prices down starting on day one.
Together, we will build what I call an opportunity economy.
Political price wars, both presidential hopefuls laying out their economic agenda in hopes of getting your vote.
We are closer than we've ever been. I don't want to jinx anything.
A hopeful note for a peace plan in the Israel-Hamas war, the meetings next week that could seal the deal. Then Hurricane Ernesto tightens its grip, the weekend warning for beachgoers across the East Coast. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. Tonight, a first look at the key components of Vice President Kamala Harris's economic agenda. Today, she delivered her first major policy speech since becoming the Democratic presidential nominee. Speaking in North Carolina, she focused on cutting costs for American families and didn't miss the opportunity to criticize her Republican opponent. Let's get right to the National Desk's Matt Gelka with more.
Kamala Harris releasing her economic plan.
Together, we will build what I call an opportunity economy.
One of her key ideas includes cracking down on price gouging. She's pledging a federal ban on the practice as it relates to food prices in her first 100 days if she wins.
My plan will include new penalties for opportunistic companies that exploit crises and break the rules, and we will support smaller food businesses that are trying to play by the rules and get ahead.
Economists aren't convinced the price gouging crackdown is the quick fix. Jason Furman, a Harvard professor and economist that was part of the Obama administration, told the New York Times the pitch is not sensible policy, partly because there are multiple factors beyond corporate greed that cause prices to rise and inflation to stick around. Harris's opponent and top critic, Donald Trump, said the plan would lead to food shortages.
Now Kamala is reportedly proposing communist price controls. She wants price controls. And if they worked, I'd go along with it too, but they don't work. They actually have the exact opposite impact and effect.
Trump vows to bring prices down himself with a focus on cutting regulations and increasing energy production.
So when I win, I will immediately bring prices down starting on day one. We will end Kamala's war on American energy, and we will drill, baby, drill.
Fiscal responsibility advocates say the country needs a better long-term plan than campaign promises.
We're not going to meaningfully bring overall prices down. What we need to do is get inflation under control, keep it under control, and then get interest rates down so that people aren't saving money at the grocery store but spending it on their home mortgage or car loan.
The inflation rate reached its lowest level since 2021, and an interest rate cut could be coming soon. But food prices are still up 21% compared to 3 years ago. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka.
Matt, thank you. And we've learned that next month's ABC presidential debate will be in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. David Muir and Lindsay Davis will host that event on September 10th at 9 p.m. Eastern. Looking ahead to Monday, the Democratic National Convention kicks off in Chicago, where Vice President Kamala Harris will officially accept the presidential nomination. Widespread street closures, parking restrictions, and security plans are in place. Gaza war protesters have cemented their plans on a march following negotiations there with city officials. We're expecting to see tens of thousands of demonstrators protesting Israel's handling of its 10-month-long military campaign in Gaza.
We are glad that now the teams will begin to work some more to work out some of the more finer details of how this deal is going to be implemented. But this bridging proposal is a positive sign. A lot of more work ahead of us.
Tonight, President Biden says a ceasefire deal that would bring a halt to fighting in Gaza is, quote, closer than we've ever been. The U.S. now reporting that after 2 days of mediation, a bridging proposal is in place. Specifics have not yet been released, but the U.S. striking an optimistic tone as truce talks wrap in Qatar with plans to resume next week in Cairo. Though tonight, the signs of hope hampered by signs of despair as the hostilities in Gaza continue to spill into the Palestinian West Bank. We are following the aftermath of an Israeli settler rampage that killed one Palestinian and badly injured several others overnight. Residents there saying at least 100 masked Israeli settlers entered a Palestinian village and shot live ammunition, burned homes and cars, and damaged water tankers. The incident drawing rare denunciation from Israeli leaders, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who said the acts would be criminally prosecuted. Condemnation also coming from the Biden administration.
It has to end. It is counterproductive to peace and security. It's obviously extremely dangerous, and it needs to stop.
The White House says it's also concerned settler violence, which has become more common since the war in Gaza began, will upend progress being made on the still vulnerable ceasefire talks. A murderer has been recaptured in North Carolina 3 days after he escaped custody during a hospital trip. Authorities found Ramon Alston at a Comfort Inn earlier today, over 100 miles away from where he originally fled. Alston now faces a felony escape charge. He was already serving a life prison sentence for killing a 1-year-old child. Police say a woman was also arrested today and charged for aiding and abetting a fugitive. A Missouri woman has been arrested on charges that she tried to defraud Elvis Presley's family by auctioning off their Graceland mansion. The DOJ says 53-year-old Lisa Janine Findley falsely claimed Presley's late daughter took out a $3.8 million loan and put Graceland up for collateral. Prosecutors say she fabricated loan documents, then scheduled a foreclosure sale when the family failed to pay. A Tennessee judge blocked the sale after Presley's granddaughter filed a lawsuit. California Governor Gavin Newsom cracking down on rising retail crime, car theft, and the sale of stolen goods in the state. Newsom signed 10 bills today that include more severe punishments for repeat offenders and improved tools for felony prosecutions. He signed the bills in Santa Clara County, which had one of the largest increases in property crimes out of California's biggest counties. And tonight, 10 U.S. service members recovering after being injured during training at Naval Air Station Fallon, according to Nevada police. Naval Air Force's authorities say 2 MH-60S Seahawk helicopters were involved. The sailors' injuries were not life-threatening, but all required medical care. Officials are investigating what happened. Ukrainian officials are urging civilians in the eastern part of Povorsk to evacuate because the Russian army is closing in. Ukrainian troops have been trying to distract Russian troops by launching a surprise incursion into Russia's Kursk region, a bold attempt to change the calculus of the war. Still, President Zelensky warning that that town and many others are facing the most intense Russian assaults right now. Students now days away from heading back to school. For some teens, that means a return to bad habits like vaping. In Texas, stricter guidelines are taking shape across school districts, requiring kids caught vaping to get pushed out to alternative schools and disciplinary programs. The National Desk's Jordan Elder joins us from San Antonio with a closer look at the impact.
And we see a lot of repeat offenders, which is kind of concerning.
When a student gets caught vaping in NISD, they go in front of Catherine Lissy for a hearing. Then they get their alternative placement. She says the vaping trend is clear and concerning.
5 years ago, we would get them every day. Now we get multiple every day.
Northside isn't alone in that. We examined the data for several districts, looking at how many times vaping landed students in alternative programs. The districts classify things a little differently, but as you can see, for all of them, the impact is significant. But the concern about space for all these students is still looming.
So we created what we called Second Chance Academy.
It's for first-time drug and alcohol offenses, a way to teach students about consequences while saving space and resources.
We're at the Northside Alternative Middle School today for part of their summer session. We're not going to show you the students who are attending, but we were invited to show you some of the activities they're working on to learn about consequences.
The only rule is we have to do the 100 and 200 points first.
This program is for middle schoolers across NISD.
All right, Captain, I need an answer.
Cohorts hearing from guest speakers and doing research for the 10 days they're here. High schoolers get their own version at their own campuses.
Yo, there it is.
But not every district has the resources to create something like this. And experts say vaping is only going to get worse.
It's unfortunately going to be a trend that's going to be here to stay.
Especially with a law this strict, Lissy says no matter what method a district uses, it's important to send kids this message.
No, you're still young enough. You made a bad choice. You still have time to turn it around.
That was Jordan Elder reporting. Up next, our exclusive one-on-one interview with former President Donald Trump, his promise to the nation should he win the White House again. Plus, a summer surge in COVID cases plaguing the nation, the 3 new variants now circulating, and where a friendly game of pickleball could soon be the center of a bitter lawsuit. Right now, Hurricane Ernesto heading north in the Atlantic towards Bermuda at the moment, with winds topping 100 miles per hour. Strong wind and storm surge forecast there through tomorrow night, with dangerous flash flooding likely this weekend. Ernesto is expected to remain offshore off the east coast, but swells from the hurricane could lead to life-threatening surf and rip currents for beachgoers, so that's something to keep in mind. And a number of new homes being built in the U.S. reached a 16-month low last month, declining for a 5th month in a row. Single-family housing starts dropped 14.1% to an adjusted annual rate of around 850,000 units. One economist believes it's because of a strong supply of new homes, plus builders expecting poor sales in the next few months. Americans, meantime, say they are feeling more optimistic about the economy. That's according to a new University of Michigan report. The Consumer Sentiment Index increased from 66.4 last month to 67.8 this month. And that was driven by Americans' expectations for the future, not necessarily their feelings about the present. Many Americans do remain concerned about making ends meet and seeing prices at the grocery store. Those higher sticker prices, something Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump said this week that he will work to push down. Patrick Hushin at our affiliate in Asheville spoke with Trump exclusively about his thoughts on combating price gouging, employing migrants, and how he's doing after nearly being killed at a political rally.
Kamala Harris says her day one promise, if elected, would be attacking price gouging in America to help with daily expenses. What is Donald Trump's day one promise?
Well, there's no such thing as her going out and doing that. What you want to do is create the incentive so that people can't cheat, they can't price gouge. And the way you do that is drill for oil and get everything down, and all of a sudden people can't do that. They can now because there's such a scarcity of everything. You can price gouge. But when there is an abundance of everything from food to oil and gas, from energy of every kind, there'll be no price gouging. There won't be, because there won't be any way they could get any money for it.
Western North Carolina is filled with beautiful farms, strawberries, watermelons, Christmas tree farms. It is reliant on migrant workers. How do you balance strict border enforcement and make sure that these farmers are taken care of?
Well, we want a lot of people to come in. We just want them to come in through a legal system. We want to make sure they're not murderers, they're not, drug dealers, and all of the people that are pouring in right now. A big percentage of the people that are coming in right now are major criminals coming out of jail. I want, and I fully understand your question, I want people to come in, but they have to be checked, they have to be vetted. We have to make sure they're going to love our country.
1 month ago, an attempted assassin tried to take your life. How are you feeling right now so the voters know? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, it was a terrible thing. It was amazing. God was watching over me because it was a miracle. If I didn't turn a certain way at a certain time, it was, no chance. And it's very much a miracle. For those that don't believe in God, I think you'll start believing in God when you see that. A lot of people have actually felt that. And the bullets went off, a lot of them, 8 of them went off, and then you had the sniper, our Secret Service sniper, with 1 bullet, found him and shot him. There was a lot of bravery displayed, a lot of things happened, but they're going to have to learn something, and I'm sure they have.
The remains of a missing World War II soldier, Army Private William Kelkins, have been identified and will return to his home state of Oregon. The Defense Department saying the remains were exhumed from the Manila American Cemetery in the Philippines, then analyzed. Kelkins died at a POW camp in 1942. His remains will be buried in Hillsboro, right outside of Portland, in September. Delta Airlines right now investigating disturbing allegations from a Georgia mother. Lauren Benton said she, her husband, and her kids were at Washington Dulles Airport earlier this month when a man seemed to mysteriously follow them around the airport and then directly onto their plane. He was escorted off because he didn't have a boarding pass for that flight. TSA says, though, he did have a boarding pass for a different flight, so there was technically no security violation. If it seems like a lot of people are getting COVID right now, you're not imagining it. We are in the middle of a worldwide summer COVID wave, and it is the largest we've seen in 2 years. The rise in cases is being driven by waning immunity in the population and 3 new variants that are circulating right now. Researchers believe the coronavirus variants have mutated enough to escape the ability of current antibodies to quickly neutralize them. The cases, of course, climbing just as kids head back to classrooms in many parts of the country. Updated shots from Pfizer, Moderna, and Novavax are expected to be available in the coming weeks. A 15-year-old who created a soap that could treat skin cancer has been named Time's Kid of the Year. This is Iman Bekele of Annandale, Virginia. After immigrating to the U.S. from Ethiopia, he began experimenting with chemicals, soon figuring out a way to build one into soap, which he learned when used regularly can help ensure medical ointment used for cancer treatments applied on the skin stays on for much longer. Bekele most likely has about a decade to go before the soap is approved as a cancer treatment, but it remains promising. Skin cancer is the most common cancer in the United States, with an estimated 1 in 5 Americans developing it at some point in their lives. Some women turn to facial fillers to look younger, but new research is leading experts to ask whether there's a potential negative impact to the immune system. Medical reporter Liz Bonis taking a closer look.
Hey there, hello to you. They are among the most popular products to help you look younger. Dermal or facial fillers can be used in a number of ways.
A little bit of plumping, some hydration, just a little more youthfulness.
Those are Shannon's goals for her facial filler with physician assistant Karen Whitney of Ohio's Advanced Cosmetic Surgery and Laser Center. She says the biggest complaint of fillers is if they are not done right.
It looks ducky and unnatural.
But now, caution being raised over fillers and a potential impact to the body's immune system. The British Association of Aesthetic Plastic Surgeons is asking if there's a possibility that these fillers could raise the risk for certain cancers. I asked facial plastic surgeon Dr. John Mendelsohn what this is all about.
There's no documented cases. There's no documented research to suggest this. Perhaps if somebody had a head and neck cancer, then the lymphatic system, which is responsible for with our white blood cells sort of playing a surveillance game, perhaps there's something that could be possible as this claim suggests.
But he says, remember this, when you look at how this filler is administered.
We use such small volumes of this that even if there's a lymphatic change, it's highly unlikely that this is going to be a causative agent for cancer.
He says you're far more likely to have other complications. Shannon had some of her filler migrate or shift.
So interestingly, my left side was worse than the right side.
Karen then can balance it out and get her back to feeling good again.
Now, as always, your own doctor, the best person to talk to about any potential risk of any therapy. With your health news, I'm Liz Bonus reporting.
Thank you, Liz. Up next, a new security policy from the NFL. Some cops are now trying to block. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America.
For a long time, this Kittery Park in Admiralty Village has been pretty quiet. That changed when 2 new pickleball courts opened last year. Now, an attorney for a woman whose property is just 6 feet from the courts is threatening to sue the town if something isn't done about the noise. The attorney says his client is a trauma nurse who works nights and sleeps during the day. He says the pickleball noise wakes her, and so do players who knock on her door or come into her yard to retrieve pickleballs.
She has sought medical care for the stress and health impacts of sleep deprivation caused by the Emery Field pickleball courts.
When the courts were built, the town cut down trees between the courts and the woman's home. The town has since put up barriers and planted trees, and the homeowner installed new windows, but nothing seems to help.
I talked to Sheriff McMahill maybe about an hour ago. We do know that the NFL is in receipt of our most recent letter.
That letter to NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell states the Police Protective Association will not cooperate with the new guidelines requiring police officers at every NFL stadium to provide a wide range of personal information, including biometrics like a photo and fingerprints, even next of kin, email addresses, date of birth, and more, and hold it for at least 3 years. The league says it's needed to prevent unauthorized access to areas like the press box or the locker rooms. But Grammas says that information isn't even required when Metro officers work on security details for a presidential visit.
Here at Southwest Research Institute on the city's west side, scientists behind me are providing support for NASA
on a critical mission.
That mission launched late last year, and it's currently on its way to Psyche, which is about 250 million miles away between the orbit of Mars and Jupiter.
Psyche is an asteroid that scientists are fascinated to learn more about.
This is a possibly metallic asteroid that might be the core of a forming planet that was then destroyed or partially destroyed through collisions with other asteroids or other bodies in space.
NASA is sending a spacecraft to learn more about the asteroid, and it's set to arrive in 2029. In the meantime, scientists all over, including here in San Antonio, are studying Psyche, and local scientists have recently discovered something that may change everything.
We did not expect any hydration on Psyche because we think it's made of metal, and metal and water shouldn't go together. But what we did see was actually trace amounts of what looks like hydration, and so that means that Psyche is probably much more complex than we originally thought.
Up next, the dynamic duo taking over as hosts for the Emmys, how they're related when we return. A giant panda in Hong Kong has given birth to not one, but two panda cubs. Ocean Park Corporation officials say Ying Ying is the world's oldest first-time panda mom at just 19. The park's chairman says it's a true rarity, especially considering the panda's age, the equivalent of 57 years old in human years. It's a cause for celebration for those rooting for the survival of this vulnerable species. And the hosts of the 76th Emmy Awards have been formally announced, and it is a father-son duo. Eugene Levy and Dan Levy of the television series Schitt's Creek made history in 2020 as the first father and son to win Emmy Awards in the same year, but they never did make it to the main stage that year to receive their awards as they were in quarantine because of the COVID pandemic. So being asked to host this year in person in the actual theater, well, that was, they said, a very special honor. The Emmy Awards will broadcast on ABC September 15th. That does it for this edition of the National Desk. Thank you so much for joining us.